we greet each and every one of you with the love of the Lord, and we welcome you to this special segment for reopening the physical edifice of the church. And this is being brought to you by the Bible Center of Rochester, Syracuse, as well as Our Spirit Online. I am your moderator for today, Dr. Johnny Harris, and I'm the senior pastor of the Interlink Churches of Western New York, as well as the chairman of the Bible Centers. Now, as we all know, we're not heading back to the way things used to be, but we're opening really a new chapter. And so after what we've learned from this pandemic, we really want to try to provide some resources from these ministry leaders as well as a medical profession to really consider how we're going to move forward with the COVID-19. So today's panel, I want to welcome Dr. Linda Clark, who's a part of the Black Physicians Network, Pastor James Cooper, the pastor of Love Fellowship Worship Center and the founder of Our Spirit Online. We have Pastor David Domina, the lead pastor of Bethel Christian Fellowship, as well as Bishop Jeffrey Melvin, of the senior pastor of the Powerhouse Church of God in Christ. We have Pastor Michael Miller, senior pastor of the New Covenant Church, and Pastor Keith Mobley, the senior pastor of the Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church in Lackawanna, New York. So we want to say greetings to each one of you. It is a pleasure for us certainly to be able to be here. And let's just get right into this in terms of questions that really I know many pastors do have in regards to this overall pandemic. And quite naturally, again, we appreciate each one of you that are here today. The first question that I want to ask, and this is going to go to first Bishop Melvin, how do you feel that the virtual church is going? And what are some of the things that you've learned during this process?
I think the virtual church has opened up some avenues that were closed before. Certainly it's a challenge when you have a digital divide with the pastors who are not used to going on Facebook or going live. I saw a meme that was very funny. It said, what do your pastors think about Facebook now? You know, everybody's doing Facebook now. So I think in one regard, it's opening up avenues that we were not used to before. In another regard, there's some catching that we have to do. I talk a lot with Pastor Cooper about what he's doing. He's turned his church into a virtual television studio. And so it's where we are. We're making the best of it. I think overall it could be a very good thing. It's a challenging thing, but I think it could be a very good thing if we utilize it properly.
Absolutely. So, and continuing with this, Pastor Miller, how would you say what is it that you've learned from this overall process as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been both an opportunity for us to expand, our reach and expand the opportunity to share the gospel online to people that we've never seen. We've had in the first month of being online, strictly online, we had 800 fresh visitors to the website watching. So that for us, that's like 100 visitors a week. So that's exciting. The challenge is, of course, is that some of us pastor in congregations that have older members, and so trying to make changes slowly, trying to keep our people connected with us as we move forward, as we make these transitions. We have had to just be really disciplined about that and trying to communicate the best we can, given the average age of our church.
Sure. Wow. It is an interesting thing, because I think we're all learning something about, the vast majority of those who really, one, don't have a church home. And this is obviously an avenue that we, of course, can be a witness unto them. So I think it's definitely a great a tool that we must continue with. To Pastor Mobley, of course, we were talking offline of some of the things that you have really started. But one question that I want to ask is how have you handled the special events, certain things that you've been doing? Can you share with us that?
Yeah, it has been certainly a change in the process of what we have normally been able to do within the walls of the church, with annual days and different events that take place in the church. We've had to really kind of think outside of the norm. sharing offline just briefly, this Sunday was our first baptism that we've had since we've been in this social distancing and trying to figure out how to still conduct the ministry of church or the ordinances of church. And baptism is something very important to the body of Christ. So what we did this Sunday is we invited just a select few of the family. A young man, it was his birthday, and it was his birthday wish that he might be baptized on his birthday. And we wanted to honor that. And it was a joy in our heart that someone of his age thought so much about God that he wanted to show forth his love of God by being baptized on his birthday. So we invited just the parents and the grandparents. When our church is set up, it allows them to sit in the audience, and we brought a camera and we have our screens up that they can view the baptism as we did it. Certainly myself and the other ministers that helped with the baptism, we were in our PPEs and had our masks and our gloves on just for his sake, and not that any of us are sick, but we wanted to reassure the family that was there that we were doing everything that we could to be safe, and also being faithful at the same time. So we did it. So we had the family sit in the audience or in the sanctuary, per se, and had the camera guy videotape it while we were doing the actual baptism, so they can view this experience in each young man's life. And that's a process that we had to, kind of reinvent just a little bit. So we're finding different ways to do godly business in a different way, and still respecting those boundaries that we sometimes have to set up to be safe in that aspect.
Sure. Thank you for sharing that. So Pastor David, we understand now that things are opening up just a little bit more, and as the weeks go, financially it'll open up a little bit more. But we have those that are out there who really need some assurance, how they will know that, of course, the church will be safe. What are some of the things that you feel we need to really provide unto them to assure that they are safe?
Can you hear me all right? My internet connection says it's kind of unstable.
Yes.
I don't care about the video, but you can hear the audio okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Well, I mean, we've been like everyone. We've had to shift gears a bit. We've always live streamed our services, but obviously we've had to get more involved in social media. So, we've been having watch parties and Facebook Live, and the advantage of what has happened is we've got a lot of our older congregation plugged in to the internet and getting familiar with how to use Facebook Live, and so that's been great. And I think like many churches, the viewership went up quite a bit the first few weeks of the COVID quarantine, but it's kind of tapered off. We've probably had over 1,000 viewers on Facebook Live, and a lot of new people. I think a lot of churches are experiencing the same thing. People are home, and they don't have a whole lot to do. And I think there are people logging in that wouldn't normally log in to watch a service. But I don't typically use the expression things aren't going to get back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there should be a new normal. Hopefully, people are more engaged in church and in the church community. There are certain things that I want to come back, to normalize, and part of that is alleviating some of the fear. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think there's a lot of contradiction, even among physicians, even among the CDC. I think the government has not helped making people feel at peace about this. So I'm a little bit frustrated about that. There never seems to be a consensus. And another thing we've talked about with many pastors is just this infringement of our freedoms here, and I think it's pretty significant. Really the only entity it talks about in the First Amendment is the church and the right to meet together and assemble together. And so one of these things that we would like to get back to normal is us meeting as soon as possible. Now we've talked quite a bit about this leadership team and other pastors, and how do we do this safely? And I think we can certainly do it safer than Lowe's and Wegmans and Home Depot, of which have never shut down. And I don't know if you've been in any of those places. There's hundreds of people walking around. So I don't think. I mean, while we need to caution people, particularly people who have weakened immune systems, compromised immune systems, they need to be careful. So when we opened for service, and we're not waiting for October, I can tell you that, it's still unclear whether the church is in any phase at all. A lot of people have talked about third phase and fourth phase, but if we're in the fourth phase, we're probably talking about October, and we have no plans on waiting till October to bring our congregation back. And when we do bring them back, we'll have 2 services. We'll move to 2 services. We've already spaced seating out, so people are 6 foot from one another. When people come back, they have to be wearing masks. Of course, we're paying attention to hygiene, and we have hand cleaner all over the place. We haven't had a firm date, but it's going to be sometime in June. And there are many churches that are doing the same. So part of alleviating that fear is just communicating the precautions that we're going to take when we do start meeting together. But I think it's important that we start meeting. I think that's gonna, when people realize that this thing is not as crazy and dangerous. I mean, there's over 98% survivability from the COVID. Most people have had it and there have been no symptoms. So I think part of alleviating the fear is the truth getting out there and people getting back to their lives, and then them realizing that, maybe this is not as bad as everybody says it is. Now, I don't want to be insensitive to people who have had friends and family who have struggled with this. I have had personally, but I think part of getting people to alleviate fear is giving people hope that things are going to get back to normal.
So if I may jump in here, and I'm going to ask Pastor Cooper this, and thank you for that, Pastor David. In terms of this overall strategy, what do you feel needs to obviously change from what you've done to what you're going to do?
Well, I mean, first of all, a lot of the changes have already happened, in that we're now setting ourselves up so that we can have a better presence on the internet with our website, on social medias. We've made sure that we had the right kind of equipment and all that so that we could have a good representation. So those kinds of things have already happened. The things that are happening now is, okay, yeah, we got to talk about the mask. We got to talk about coming back, but I'm in no hurry. The last thing that I want to do is to have somebody come back to church and have any kind of COVID connected to our church. And that could certainly happen, because it just seems like as churches, and particularly at my church, because for the last 8 months to a year, we're fairly well packed in this building. I mean, we're fairly full, and I don't have a big church, but it's fairly full. So I could see where this could really be a problem. So we're looking at things like, and we're trying to validate this, because I don't want to do anything just based on my feeling. I want to have some science behind it. And looking at things like to say, okay, would it be safer if we took our children out of the children's room and maybe put a tent outside, if they would be safer outside? I'm also looking at saying, maybe we don't have church in our sanctuary. Maybe I just have Bible study there, or some of the smaller gatherings there at some point, and do a big tent outside and just have our service outside. I've already contacted the city of Chili, or the town of Chili, to try to understand, okay, do I need a permit? What are the ordinances? How can we do this, within the confines of the law? But I'm just, all of those kinds of things have already started. So we're already starting that whole process. And like I said, I'm not trying to rush back. I've seen the effects of this COVID. And I would tell you, the biggest issue that I have is that we just don't know enough about it. And Pastor is absolutely right. We're getting a whole lot of different stories about what it is, how you get it. It seems like the numbers don't make any sense because certain people get it, certain people don't get it. Some people get it to one degree and not to another degree. It seems like certain people, you know, because of their, you know, work environment, they should be getting it, but they're not, their rate of infection doesn't seem to be any different than the general population. So I'm still trying to understand the science, but I will not in clear conscience bring folks back into a building unless the Lord speaks to me and says, okay, Pastor Cooper, you've done all that you can do to keep folks safe, and therefore I'm good. I need to make sure that I get a well done. So I'm willing to slow down, and I'll tell you why.
Amen.
Because I think that we have gotten pretty darn good at this virtual church. I'm shocked at the efficiency and the impact that this virtual church is really having. I wasn't expecting that. And if I got to go another month or two with virtual church, I'm good. Let's do it. You know, let's do it. I'm kind of liking it.
I definitely understand that, and I'm gonna come to you, Bishop Melvin, because I want to get your take in terms of this. But one of the things that, of course, we wanted to make sure of is that this wasn't just a perspective that we have, obviously, as faith leaders, but we have someone that is involved in terms of the science portion to provide us even some things relative to the medicine. So, to Dr. Linda Clark, we're grateful for you to be willing to come on and just share with us in this time. And we know how busy it is, especially with all that's happening. What is it that we are missing? Because again, we are hearing conflicting stories here or there. So what is it that we as the church need to make sure that we're doing in terms of the best practices?
Mm-hmm. I think the local stories have been pretty consistent. You know, I think some of the conflict may have come between the federal and the local levels, but I think our local health department, and I'm in Monroe County, I'm not sure where everybody is, has been consistent, and our governor has been clear. I don't agree with everything he said, but overall I think he's done a good job with the assessment and his strategy. So you know, the problems that I see is that the impact of this disease is not equal on everybody, right? And there's a couple ways to look at it, but no matter how we look at it, we have very little data. So the data that we do have, it's very clear that Black and Latino people have much worse outcomes. The state has data about antibodies, right? So antibodies, you know, the body makes an antibody after it's been attacked by a germ or a virus or bacteria, and that shows that you've been exposed. So we know from that antibody data that we don't have a lot of locally, but we have statewide, is that there's a very disproportionate amount of Black and brown people with the antibodies, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're protective. So, and people are like, oh, I've got antibodies. We don't know that. You know, people with HIV have antibodies, but those antibodies can never kill that disease. So, you know, we have to be clear that's not necessarily equal to a cure, but it's a good way of looking to see who's been exposed. And we can go. I can give you another hour on that. I'm not going to chat on that. But locally, you know, what you're hearing is that we're trying to do more testing. And that's that, you know, that nasopharyngeal swab testing that our governor made look like it was nothing, but that's a lie, right?
It is. I know.
It's not comfortable. But, you know, as you know, to really understand what the disease is doing, we got to know how much disease there is. You know, to Pastor David and, you know, Pastor Cooper's point, you know, it's kind of hard to define what's going on when you're getting these, and that's where I think some of the messages may feel mixed, because we don't know yet. And we only know through, you know, monitoring symptoms, doing the testing. So I agree the picture's incomplete, and because of that, we must be very cautious. As we know, nursing homes are heavily impacted. Older people are heavily impacted. So we really need to be very, very careful with that population. I know this wasn't my question, but I was burning to
No, this is great.
about when do you know it's safe, right, to go back to church? And I guess it's, you know, kind of a relative question. What is safe? You know, my field is preventive medicine as well as occupational medicine. So I'm always trying to increase the safety of the worker, right? But the fact of the matter is there's always some risk. And I think, you know, from the medical point of view, I mean, you all have a different set of responsibilities around how you allay fear. But I think to say there's no risk that is not a logical statement, right? Anytime you have your 90-year-old, my mother-in-law is 91. Anytime she steps out of her house to get on the van to go to church, there's a risk. You know, one fall or one, you know, the influenza, get it, it can be a risk. We still have people who die from the flu. So hopefully, as you're preaching and teaching, it's I agree that you shouldn't have fear, but to say there's no risk, I disagree with, right? You know, anyway, so I won't go over all your previous questions, but as a parishioner, I'm loving the online experience because I get to at least 3 services a week every Sunday. So it's been very fulfilling for me. I drop a little seed each place, so I get.
This is about, as one said, this is about the fingerprints versus the footprint. So you can make your fingerprints to go into different services. Bishop Melvin, I saw you writing some things there, so I know you have something to add to this. So come on, talk to me.
Well, I want to say that I really appreciate the diversity of this panel. I appreciate the both spiritual and scholarly approach of it. Thank you, Dr. Clark, for your input. I think that we need to understand, so we're praying. I know that Pastor Breela has a 24-hour prayer line going. I have a prayer group between 40 and 90. We pray midnight and 5 a.m. every day. You know, I know most pastors I know they have a prayer line going. We trust God for miracles. But with that, we also live by Psalms 90 and 12, that we may, you know, apply our hearts to wisdom. Teach us a number of days that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. I think it's a very different approach from pastors who have not seen that much death to those pastors like me. I've known 50 people personally to die, 50 personally. This morning, I got notice that my niece, my niece, she got diagnosed. And so I think that for some reason, maybe the doctor could approach this. It seems that the disease disproportionately attacks people that have diabetes and high blood pressure. That's people of color. In Michigan, I've known about 20 people in Michigan that passed away, and a number of them were congregating in either meetings, jurisdictional meetings, or funerals. And so that's why you hear the apprehension for people like me, Dr. Cooper, other pastors that I know. If we have a pastor that has not seen any deaths or very few deaths, it is not as cumbersome on that pastor. But for me, it is daunting. I don't want to lose one senior because I was hasty in bringing the church back together. Not one. I don't want that on my conscience. I don't want the blood on my hand. So I think that no one's really talking about the disparity of how it affects one community as opposed to another. And I think along with that, there's also marginalized people don't get the health care. They're more reluctant to go to the hospital. So I've known friends and people that have died at home because they didn't go in. I know folks that were forced to go to the hospital and ended up on a ventilator. So there's a lot of things in here that we're not really addressing the cultural impact, you know, and not only that, let me say one more thing too. Another reason I'm reluctant to come together is my folks say, we ain't gonna act right. They're not gonna keep the mask on. They're gonna hug and kiss. They're gonna pull the mask down the sing. So, you know, I know our people. I turned down the funeral. I was approached by my person, and they said, Pastor, can you do the funeral of this young man that died? And I said, I don't think it's a good idea because y'all are not going to act right. You're going to limit the number of people coming in there. There's going to be 400 people. I'm not going to be able to control y'all. Y'all not going to, I know, because I know you all. I know the family. So I told them, I said, I'm not going to do it because you're not, and I don't want to have our church as a hot spot where people die. So in considering all of the technical and medical things, we also need to consider the cultural aspect of getting back together. You know the state of your flock. I know the people that our pastor. We're going to hug and kiss no matter what the attorney general, no matter what the attorneys say. The general say. We're talking about the physician. I'm getting law and medicine mixed up. We're going to get together. We're going to hug. They're going to start off elbow bumping. We're going to end up pulling their mask down, hugging and kissing. And so I'm concerned about those issues too.
That in itself is a very interesting thing because I have to admit, I was together with some of our congregants today, and in the midst of it, we were praying for our outreach. We were distributing breakfasts and lunches, and in the midst of it, I said, "Come on, let's pray." And I immediately put my hands out. When you're so used to gathering, then I had to catch myself. So obviously, even with us, it's a thing that you have to, of course, practice. Pastor Cooper, I see your hand up.
I mean, right to that point, to exactly that point, I never realized how affectionate we were until this COVID thing. I never realized how much we touch and embrace each other. And it almost seems rude in a way when you see someone or you're with someone and you got to stand back from. I remember that last Sunday when we were in service, the kids come into my office, before service because they want little Twizzlers that I give the kids all Twizzlers when they come to church. And so they come in, they want the Twizzlers, but this Sunday I couldn't hug them. I couldn't give them a Twizzler. I couldn't do anything. And I felt rude. It hurt. It literally hurt my feelings because this is just a child. They don't understand. And when we bring the kids back, all they know is how to be kids. And all I really want them to know is how to be kids.
Right.
And
yes.
I realize how affectionate we are. And so, I, like I said, for me, I'm almost like, let's hold on until I can let them be kids because I don't want to teach them to be afraid of one another.
And along those lines, and I want to ask this question to Pastor Keith as well as to Pastor Mike, because it really deals with our children. And this, how do we handle the children's church? Both of you have enormous children that's a part of your ministry. So how do you handle that? Whichever one of you want to go first in terms of that.
Wow. Yeah. So thanks, Keith. It's a challenge moving forward. It's something that we've considered and prayed about. And quite honestly, we do not feel comfortable given the lack of information that we have right now that we could resume children's ministry, nursery ministry, or even youth ministry beyond what's just online. So, we've packaged stuff just like everybody else. We've packaged things for the parents. They get emails. They get really good curriculum delivered to them in their inbox every single Saturday so they can open it up on Sunday and then have at it. We have team groups that are meeting online on Zoom meetings just like this. But we do not feel comfortable enough that we would be able to maintain any sort of safety with having resuming children's ministry until we know more. And I've told the body, I'm like, at least Labor Day, but we're going to watch the school system is what we're going to do. We're going to follow it. We're going to follow their lead because they have, certainly they have more experts speaking to them about these kinds of situations than what we do. We have to hunt and search and look and find. Nobody's sending stuff to us telling us how to do things. But with schools, they will have that. And so we're looking for them to kind of help shepherd us through this process. And when they feel comfortable having class and what their classes look like, then that gives us an opportunity to kind of follow in their lead and see, okay, what does safe look like? So that's kind of where we're at.
Yes.
I would
That's
certainly
key.
agree with Pastor Mike. I mean, it's many things that
Now, I can barely hear you, Pastor Mobley.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Let me turn
Yeah.
my up.
Mhm.
Is that a little better there?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
As Pastor Mike stated, we're doing many things similar to what they're doing. One thing that we've learned about young people, they're very tech smart. It seems like they come out of the womb knowing how to handle new devices. So the technology, use that as effective means of ministry, reaching out to the children and doing different things in that avenue. But I feel like Pastor Cooper as well. In our young people, I constantly embrace them, and I give them different things as they come to the office and whatnot. And we have a very large young ministry here by young people, and it's been disheartening not being around them. But we stay in touch and doing different means. But as coming back, I do see the warning of caution, not bringing them into environment that may be unsafe and cause them harm. That's been my prayer. God, give me guidance in when it's safe to come back. And I think what Dr. Clark has mentioned in regards to the local versus the federal and state, it's been all over the place. And really, there's no clear, the precise mode of information that's coming out that we known that the disease, that we don't know everything fully. It's been very interesting trying to follow it. And even with the opening of things like now, I feel, and this is just me, I feel personally that it's more about the dollar versus the life. And opening up, but I don't think it's, no one's looking at the data to see if this is, where we're supposed to be. For instance, we're in Erie County here, and if you look up downstate, they were their numbers were a lot different than Erie County. Erie County seemed like every week the numbers were going higher and higher. And when downstate opened up 2 days later, now we're saying Erie County is now safe to open up when our numbers were constantly going up. So it's confusing, and I've instructed our people here at the church to stay put for now until we get a clear understanding of what's going on, because in the minority community, we are very touchy-feely, and we get around and we embrace, and this stuff is passing. We have a high number of people who are diabetics and different underlying diseases, and we want to make sure people are safe. But precise to the question you asked in regards to our young people, we're moving with them with caution. I don't want to see any of our young people be harmed or affected in any negative way, so we're trying to proceed with much caution, particularly with our young people.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you both for answering that. I have to go back because I have to admit, there was one thing that Pastor David stated that just really sort of like blew my mind. I was like, wow. It was where you indicated that this phase 4 may not come until October. I'm saying, wow. Because my thinking is that, all right, hey, it's going to be maybe somewhere in July. So I guess I need to, has anyone else thought of this particular, that by July or at least mid-July that we would be back in this position? Because, and I want to pose this question along with it, and Dr. Clark, you're going to have to jump in terms of this. As we are being told, this is coming back in full force in the fall. So in terms of that, what kind of data do you see that aligns us to, okay, hey, this is potentially the time that we may be? And I understand that the data is very limited.
Right. And I think the history is probably one thing to look at, right? That from 100 years ago, the pandemic that tore through our land did it in 2 peaks. So I think not only that we have to be prepared for a second wave of COVID, but that's on top of our regular flu season too. So we have a double whammy that might be coming this fall. I know our organization, we have a gala every year in September. We just went ahead and canceled it because even in September, if we're allowed to congregate, I don't think we're going to be packing a building, and thinking that that's a smart way to go. So I agree, now's the time to start thinking or continue to think about alternate ways of staying connected. We are relational people. We are. And, we have to definitely figure out other ways to do it. I remember I saw a patient and said, "Oh my God, I'm going to COVID jail." His son had killed himself, and he was on a drinking binge. And what's the first thing I did was in my face mask and everything was to go to hug this man. I'm thinking I know better, but it's just it is hard to be obedient. It really is. But no, I think it's smart and you guys are doing great with already, thinking of alternate plans and knowing what's working. I know I'm not going to steal thunder because I think that there's a list, but I understand that in a lot of places the giving is okay. I saw one video where somebody accused another pastor of not closing because he was worried about the offering plate. But I feel like a lot of congregations, and this is way outside of what I'm supposed to be asking and talking about, but have worked so many aspects of their ministry out. I've got at least 3 different guides to reopening churches. And I know the one that Mayor Warren sent our governor, for instance, calls out not having children's church. So there are some there's some differences in the guides that I've seen. But, I think of children, I mean, if anybody has children, the little germ factories, and they immediately bring it right into your house. Because they're not going to always wash their hands. They're not going to have some of these kids are good today, but my kids, oh my gosh, yeah, something's on the floor, they were going to eat it. So I think we have to be very cautious with them. We thought originally that, well, they won't be harmed, and now we're seeing this specialized inflammatory condition in children. So we just, I think caution it just makes sense, and it's not forever. It's not. It's just a long time.
So go ahead, Pastor.
Yeah, Dr. Clark. So we have been talking about this idea of figuring out how to do church outdoors. Just your opinion. I understand we're still collecting the facts. Would that be better, or does it matter?
We're still got to be in masks. We still got to practice distancing, so that that kind of limits just your square footage in terms of how much space you need to achieve what you want to achieve. Can you ask me specifically what you mean?
Well, I'm just saying, if this is something that comes, from our respiratory breathing and stuff like that, inside, it just seems like ventilation would be a challenge, but outside might not be as big of a challenge. And I'm saying it seems logical, but it seems like a lot of things with this COVID don't seem logical.
Yeah, remember, I mean, I hear you and I get it, but it's still proximity, right? And I love, my husband's a musician, for those of y'all who know him, and I was like, you gotta do something else besides that choir, because singing, you gotta spread that spit even further than just plain talking, thinking, laughing, thinking of things that project particles farther. So that still happens outside. And the other thing that happens outside is people may not be hand washing as much, and you still, have this stuff on surfaces. And I'm a face toucher, and I would have inoculated myself 10 times, following behind some people. So you got to kind of keep that in mind, indoors and out.
Dr. Clark, can I ask you?
Sorry.
Can I ask you a question, Dr. Clark?
I'll try.
How are people's immune systems strengthened?
I don't know that they are strengthened. I think people with a normal immune system may be able to mount a response, but as I mentioned before, we don't know that humoral making the antibodies will truly be protective. But the hope is with enough people who are infected and recover, that'll protect the people who aren't able to mount a response. Certainly a vaccine, if and when it's developed, will depend on people having a fairly good immune system to make those antibodies or the defense that's needed for the virus.
Don't you think that keeping people quarantined is going to weaken their immune system?
No,
You don't think so?
no.
Most of the majority of these COVID deaths had been from quarantined individuals.
But most of the deaths have been from nursing homes, so I think
Right.
that's kind of difficult to say, right? People in nursing homes aren't necessarily healthy folks.
No,
Otherwise,
they're not.
you know,
No, they're not.
exactly. So don't confound it, right? You know, don't attribute a risk that's there just because of the nature of why the people are there. So people who are older already have immune systems that aren't as good. They have chronic medical problems that make them more susceptible to other problems, including COVID.
So Pastor David, based upon what you're asking, is it your feeling that we've been sequestered too long in this particular process, and that in terms of the church, your feeling is that we need to pretty much set the standard for what we feel is best and move out on it?
I have some personal opinions, and I think it was mentioned before. I think people need to be directed by the Lord and by the Holy Spirit, and He may prompt people to do different things.
Mm-hmm.
But I know plenty of doctors, and I've talked to other doctors about this, and they're frustrated about how all of this is handled. And I don't mean to be insensitive, but more people will die from the normal flu than the COVID. They're already the numbers are higher from the normal flu. I've been really frustrated from the get-go on how this has been handled. Nobody talks about the other effects that this has had. I mean, there's a rise in suicide, addiction, depression, all these things. And I know this is a great alternative, this video church, but this is not how the church is supposed to operate. There are people that are suffering out there because we are wired to be in community. And I think the longer, I think the damage this does, no one talks about that.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Let me go ahead, Pastor Clark, and then I want the others.
I'm not a pastor yet, but no, but I agree with you, and I think there's at least a lot of discussion in medical circles around the impact of isolation. I've been very concerned. Like I said, my mother-in-law is 91 years old. She hardly sees anybody because of this. So we're very concerned about mental health. I treat people with substance use disorders, as I kind of alluded to before. Very concerned about, even it's good to have a video visit, but it's not the same. We had
a family member that died alone in a nursing home, and they would not allow her family to go see her. Yeah. It's absurd.
Yeah, but it could have been, I've had situations, not at my church, but at a close friend of mine in Georgia, where he literally had to bury the whole family for that same reason. Someone was living in the house and refused to go to the doctor. And as a result, not only did the son, but the daughter, the mother, and the grandmother were all buried within the same month, same disease. I mean, this is, but I think, Pastor Dalman, what you bring up is the challenge that we face, because we've got so much information and conflicting information that's coming at us, that we got to make some decisions. And particularly, when we look at our population of people, listen, I said earlier, I said, I'm in no hurry to get back. but in reality, I yearn to get back. I mean, I really, really do. But I'm just saying, you know, for you and for your congregation, we're living in this kind of day now where what happens in your church does have an impact on what happens in my church. And what happens in my church does have an impact because we let these people out, you know, and they're related and families and friends and stuff like that. And so, you know, we just got to be a little more, I would say, sensitive. And like, you know, you did mention, you know, people have to be led. So just because you open up the church on Sunday doesn't mean that people have to come, you know, that's
or that they will.
they can make for themselves, assuming that they're going to make good decisions. But I want to go back to a part of the conversation we were having before when you ask about, you know, the young people and stuff like that. And I just think it's real important during this time that we not leave them out.
Sure.
I ordered a bunch of masks for my church maybe a month ago because I kind of saw what was happening. I said, let me order the mask, and just so that if we do come back, people can have a mask. And so our children's ministry said, well, what do we do about the kids? I don't want to inflict, you know, fear on them. What do we do with them? And one of the ideas that they came up with, we haven't done it yet because, you know, the kids haven't come back, was we ordered these kids masks and they were going to have them paint them and put, you know, smiley faces or, you know, something that says I'm smiling or hearts or stuff like that to make kind of a craft of the masks to help, you know, them understand, you know, this is not a bad thing. It's just kind of helping, you know, them kind of get over that. The other thing that we do is we have our main service at 10 o'clock, but then right at 11, we have our children's ministry, they do videos. And after our service, you know, they do the service ends, we do the thing, okay, give this way, here's a couple announcements, stay tuned for our children's church. And then they do the video for the children as a way to continue to reach them and to teach them. And there's some really, really good curriculum out there, both that the kids can record themselves or that you can just play. I think it's Orange or something like that is what we use. But there's some really good tools. I'll give you one other thing that, you know, just the creativity of our youth department, because periodically, a couple times a year, I'll do pizza with the pastor. And so we already have it on the schedule, and then this hit and we can't get together. So we decided to do pizza with the pastor virtually. So what we did was we ordered pizza because, you know, we get all our pizzas through, I guess I'm plugging Mark Pizzas. I don't mean to do that, but nevertheless, we called them. We said, listen, we need to deliver 15 pizzas at 6 o'clock on this particular Saturday. And they were able to accommodate us. And by the way, they do have some church and school pricing that made it fairly affordable. And so we had the pizzas delivered, and then we did a Zoom call. And one time we did a scavenger hunt, and it was so much fun. I mean, it was even more fun than some of the times when we were together ourselves. So we'd have them go find things like hot sauce or a red sock, and it had to be on their feet, or they had to put on a shower cap, and you had to go take a picture with an adult with a hat on, and, you know, just fun things like that. And they really got a kick out of that. We've done some other things as well, but I just give that to you all. It's just some fun ways to make this time fun for them and not them miss out, you know?
Yeah, and it should be. I love these innovative ways to incorporate our children. I'm going to come to you, Pastor Melvin, because I know you have something to say. We have a little less than 10 minutes to go. Okay, so go ahead, Pastor Melvin. You were going to say something.
I'll be brief. I do agree. I mean, this disease this pandemic is evil. We know that there's some social ills going on. I saw something that said alcohol consumption is up 230%. All along with that, in New York State, the liquor stores were considered to be essential businesses. So a liquor
Right.
store never closed. So I can't figure that out, you know. But I think I think to say that this is, I've known 50 people to die. About 45 of them died from COVID. I've
Mhm.
never had a flu season where I had 45 friends to die. So it's affecting me probably disproportionately than maybe some other populations. And I think that we need to look at the precedents. If you look at, and the Dr. Clark alluded to it, if you look at the Spanish flu of 1918, they had great big rallies in Philadelphia and in Denver, Colorado. Both of those became hotspots. And then the second wave was worse than the first wave. And so those things are very concerning to me. This is not regular. I remember back in October, we had about half the church out, the church that I pastored in Buffalo. And I said, this is not a regular flu. This is a demon flu. And we didn't know what it was. You know, I said, this is something unusual about this, where whole families were sick. They couldn't breathe. And now we're finding out there are people, and I believe me and my wife, got to tell you the truth, I was on my back for like 4 or 5 days. If I don't eat for 3 or 4 days, look at me, something is wrong. If I'm not eating 3 or 4 days, it's a real issue, you know what I mean? And so this is, in no wise can this be compared to a regular cold or flu. I've never died from the flu. I could have died from COVID-19. I have friends that have died from COVID-19. I have a friend that just came off the respirator the other day, Pastor Glenn Alexander, just came off the other day. And I had a member that was on the respirator for 35 days. And we went into some intense prayer, and she came up 35 days. They're calling her the miracle woman of Roswell Park, you know, the cancer center in Buffalo. So this is not normal. This is not running the mill. It's not routine. It is something extra. And that's where my caution comes in about jumping back into service. My caution comes in with that.
And I'm sorry to jump in front of you, Pastor Miller, but
Sure.
that is so key because we don't know what asymptomatic people are doing out there. So some of us are going to feel great, and we're typhoid Mary, you know, just making people ill. You know, you probably read about the case of the lawyer downstate who was in a Jewish area, I'm sorry, and infected 50 people in a couple days. So, you know, and it is scary when you might be making people sick. And I just want to, you know, plug our pre-screening project we're doing, because a lot of people don't feel that bad and they don't get treated and they don't go for care until way too late. So we're really trying to educate people that, you know, that mild shortness of breath might actually be that your oxygen level is really, really low, and that you could measure that at home. So,
Sure.
you know, we're really encouraging people to, you know, get educated, get seen faster, so they don't have those horrible outcomes that you're talking about. Really, I mean, when people talk about people show up to the emergency room and within a few hours are on a ventilator, that's crazy and very different. So anyways, I'm sorry, Pastor Miller.
No, you're good. Thank you, Pastor Mobley.
One other thing I would add to the conversation as well that we need to look at as well as churches is that from a legal standpoint, if we open up too soon and we're not cautious and somebody gets sick in our sanctuary, do we open the door then for legal lawsuits for people saying, I came to church because the pastor told me I had to be here and now I'm sick or my family has died because we moved too soon. So I think we also have to look at it from a legal standpoint as well. From a church perspective, because people are
It's too happy world.
too heavy, real too heavy.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
I would concur with that. That's something that we've done. We've reached out to our insurance agency and asked them, are there any riders for infectious disease, and what would they recommend? And you know, they feel that as long as we take precautions, as long as we're wise, as long as we're not allowing any of our staff who are sick to be here, as long as we are taking the right kind of precautions, that we are, it doesn't mean that people aren't going to sue. That we never have that assurance, but they won't win. They probably won't win based on the opinions right now. But there's we have to do our due diligence. We have to ensure that our places are safe.
Yes.
Otherwise, that, you know, it's not just lawsuits, but we're putting people at risk, right? Well, we
Yes.
don't want to do. That's not our call. Our calling is to shepherd people and to guide them, and to just to be the hands of Jesus, right?
Amen. Amen. Well, listen, we are unfortunately out of time, and we're grateful for this moment again for each one of you and your perspective to really again what this will look like, of course, in our near future. And
Pastor Harris,
Yes,
it looked
sir.
like if we have just a few more minutes, I think Pastor Mobley wanted to say something. I think he was itching in his seat. And then I had one thing I wanted to say as well. I'll make it quick. Go ahead, Pastor Mobley.
One thing that we did do as well, I agree with Pastor Miller. We did talk to our insurance writer as well in regards to that aspect. But one thing we did, we have a member here who owns a cleaning service. So we do thorough cleaning of the sanctuary. We do have maintenance cleaners that cleans weekly on a weekly basis, but we're doing a deep cleaning before we invite anybody back into the sanctuary. So that's one other thing that we're looking to do to
Sure.
make the environment is safe before we invite people back.
Yeah, which is definitely important to all of this. It is important to really hone in on what is important in terms of, again, these wonderful recommendations that are important to all of us for, again, moving forward. Now, I'm looking forward to, of course, hopefully all of you will be able to come back and we'll be able to do another portion, because I believe that there's more discussion certainly that we can have. But, you know, overall, I want to encourage anyone that is of course watching this, that if you have any particular questions regarding the reopening, and of course these particular pastors, I'm going to give you an email address, which is Pastor Cooper's email address, that you can certainly email any particular questions, because again, we want to make sure that you are in the know and doing what is necessary for this next step. You can email James Cooper at jcooper400@aol.com. Again, that's jcooper400@aol.com. Again, I want to thank all of you for taking time out. We know how busy every one of you are, not only to your congregations and to, of course, the medical field, but of course to your families first and foremost. And again, we're looking forward to God certainly intervening. And I like one of the things that Pastor Melvin talked about in terms of that we would apply wisdom even throughout this period. As I often say, may we continue to be safe. May we be smart. More than anything, may we be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. So we thank God for each one of you again. Until next time, we greet you and your families, and that you will continue to remain safe in the Lord. God bless you.
God bless you, everybody. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.